Prologue. The sword that recognized itself. Before there was light, there was possibility. Before there were stars, there was vibration. Before there was space, there was consciousness. The ancient Hermetic said, all is mind, the universe is mental. Today, 13.8 billion years after the beginning, we approach this sentence in a different way. Sorts, formals, practicals, and data. When the astrophysics describes the origin of the all, they call it a singularity, a point of infinity density, beyond space, time, and course. But what if that point was not a thing, but a sword? Harald Lesch once said in a lecture, the universe didn't just somehow arise. It was prepared so that consciousness cloud became possibility. Perhaps that we call the Big Bang is nothing other than the moment in which thinking creates itself. Silence then this sword has been following. Swords, matter, energy, lives, and call itself human. The question is not, is there consciousness in the universe, but is the universe itself consciousness? Chapter 1. The Order of Numbers. Science calls it change. Philosophy calls it necessity. Hermeticism calls it harmony. The cosmos is turned to a degree that shatters all imagination. According to the measure returns of the Planck mission, the universe is made of roughly 86% dark energy, 27% dark matter, and only about 5% visible substance. If any one of these values were even slightly different, but just a fraction of a percent, there would be no galaxies, no stars, no life. The physicist Steven Weinberg wrote, the more we learn about the law of nature, the more surprise it becomes that they allowed for life at all. This position is breathtaking. Even tiny temperature fluctuations in the cosmic background radiation, barely 1/10,000th of degrees, decided where matter gathered and structure could arise. This is not ordinary chaos, it is orchestrated change. Harald Lesch put it this way: when we look up at the sky, we don't see disorder, we see a melody playing itself. Hermeticism would say, mind was take measure. What we call constants of nature may be the syllables of a great word, the word by which the universe speaks itself. Thus numbers becomes language, and order becomes meaning. Physics calls it fine structure, philosophy calls it meaning. Hermetism Creation. Chapter 2. The Silence of Physics. The forward we look, the greater the unknown becomes. Physics can measure how fast galaxies move away from each other, but it does not know why they do. Space itself is expanding, driven by a force we call dark energy. If you calculate this energy from the equations from quantum physics, you get a value that would be about 50 orders of magnitude too large. If that number were correct, the universe would have torn itself apart instantly. The actual energy is tiny, almost zero. The gap between theory and reality is so immense that not model can explain it. Many physicists call this the great problem of the modern cosmology. One of them said, either we misunderstand the vacuum, or the vacuum understands more about us than we do about it. What we call emptiness is in truth a sea of energy that vibrates without ceasing. Physics speak of the quantum field, mysticism of the ether, Hermetism of spirit. Different words, the same source. Perhaps dark energy is not a riddle, but a remembrance, the quiet breathing of the cosmos, the caress of holds everything together. And perhaps the silence of physics is not a failure, but an infection to listen more deeply. Between the equations, something else resounds, a hum that can only be understood in silence. Chapter 3. The Higgs field, the invisible that creates form. There is a field that is everywhere and yet remain invisible to us. Physics calls it the Higgs field. In 1916, four scientists, among them Peter Higgsfield and Francesco Englert, proposed the idea that space is not empty, but filled with an invisible energy that slows particles down and thereby give them mass. For almost 50 years it remained a hypothesis. Only in 2012 was the proof found at the CERN Research Center. In a 27-kilometer ring accelerator deep underground, a particle was discovered that matches exactly this field, the Higgs field boson. A moment that shocks modern physics. Peter Higgs later say in his Nobel lecture, the field is not something that exists in space. It is what gives space its properties. An invisible medium that grants form, weight and stability. Without the Higgs field, matter would not be possible. Everything would remain poor waves, a vibration possibility without shape. Hermeticism would say the invisible creates the visible. It is the ancient principle of mentalism. All is mind, the universe is mental. The Higgs field is the physical counterpart of this principle. It is the invisible consciousness that turns energy into form. If consciousness is the idea, then the field is the canvas on which the idea takes shape. Every stone, every atom, every cell, an expression of this invisible architecture. Physics sees a quantum field. Hermeticism sees mind. Two language, one truth. Perhaps the Higgs field is not only the source of mass, but the memory of the universe itself, the sea in which everything takes form in order to recognize itself. Chapter 4. The flow of mind, implicit order and recognize. Beyond all instrument lies a layer of reality that cannot be taken apart. In 1918, the physicist David Bohm spoke of the implicate order, a deeper dimension in which everything is already contact. What we perceive as separate objects are only surface of this hidden wholeness. Bohm wrote, "What we see is the unfoldable reality, but every unfolding implements a folding. Matter and mind, two movements of the same stream." Quantum physics confirms particles can remain entangled, even that they are light years apart. Change one, the other respawn immediately, with no time delay, no visible connection. It seems as if there is an invisible center, a place where everything in conversation. Hermeticism calls the center spirit, which permeates all. Physics speaks of information that is never lost. Perhaps both are the same, meaning seeking from. When we look into the cosmos, we see partners repeating. Galactic structures resembled neutral networks. Streamlines in rivers mirror magnetic fields. Leaves arrange themselves by the same laws. They shape spirits, nebulae in the sky. As above, so below, as within, so without. The ancient principle describes excellent that resonance between all levels of being. David Bohm once said in Ascensions that consciousness and matter are two aspects of one process, a process that is constantly unfolding itself anew. Perhaps what we call consciousness is simple the movement, by which the universe feels itself. An endless stream of perception and response, the flow of mind that lives in everything. Chapter 4. The problem of consciousness, from Descartes to Strouven and Jung. For as long as humans have been thinking, they've asked, what is consciousness and where does it came from? In 1641, René Descartes wrote in his meditation One First Philosophy, I think, therefore I am. With this he split world and self. The body became a mechanism, the mind an independent witness. But this separation did not come without a price. The more precisely we understand the body, the more mysterious the mind became. In 1974, the philosopher Thomas Nagel asked, what is it like to be a bat? A simple image, yet it opens a boundary. No instrument in the world can ever capture the inner flavor of experience. In 2006, Gail Straward added, if matters give rise to consciousness, then matter itself must contain some form of consciousness. With that, an ancient idea returns, pan-physics. Everything is ensouled not by accident, but by participation in being. Carl Gustav Jung would say, the unconscious is nature's within us. For him, the psyche was not a byproduct of the brain, but a space in which the world dreams. In dreams, archetypes and synchronicities, Jung saw a language of the universe, the psyche not separate from nature, but its mirror. As physics and psychology connects, both search for the place where perception and matter become one. Perhaps consciousness is not in the head, but in the cosmos, and thinking is only a wave on this sea. Chapter 6. The Seven Principles, Hermetism in the Light of Science. More than 2000 years ago, the Hermetic teachers condensed into 7 sentences. What is one again being confirmed in today's laboratories? 1. All is mind. Physics call it energy. Everything that exists is vibration. One different level of destiny. 2. As above, so below. The small mirror, the larger. The structure of the atom resembles the structure of galaxies. Even the networking of a brain cells follows the same pattern as the cosmic filament web. 3. Vibration. Nothing stands still. Even in the apartment vacuum, particles and antiparticles fluctuate. Modern quantum fields theory confirms emptiness is only the pulsing of potential. 4. Polarity. Every force has its counterpart. Matter and antimatter, light and shadow, order and chaos. Not enemies, but poles of the same wave. 5. Rhythm. Everything flows. The orbits of the planets, the oscillation of electrons, the heartbeat of life, one single beat. 6. Cause and effect. In the quantum world, this becomes a dialogue between possibility and observation. What we see arise in the moment of seeing, a principle that old text already knew. Every effect has its cause, yet in mind both are one. 7. Gender. Everything carries the principle of active and receptive, of receiving an impulse, in the cosmic as in the human being, a constant alternation of form and emptiness. Carl Gustav Jung called this interplay the conjunctum oppositorium. The unity of opposites is not lead to dissolution, but to wholeness. And Jung added, synchronicity is the bridge between inner and outer world. When two effects touch each other in meaningful ways without being causally connected, the world speaks to us in this own language. Perhaps this is the either unright principle meaning becomes whatever meaning arise, mind is present. Sciences measure motion. Hermetism recognize meaning, and consciousness connects the two. Chapter 7. The synthesis from the measurable to the meaningful. After a century of separation, an old wound is beginning to close. Science and spirit, long seen as the opposite, are beginning to speak the same language. Physics show that observe and observed cannot be separate. Every gaze changes what it looks at. The physicist David Bohm wrote, "The whole is not the sum of its parts. It is what makes the parts possible in the first place." And the psychologic Carl Gustav Jung had already answered decades early in his only way. The soul is not closed unit. It is a piece of world event. Both are speaking of the same stream. One thought formulates, the other thought symbols. Consciousness and matter are two sides of a movement that becomes aware of itself. Philosophy see in this the overcoming of the old dualism. The subject is no longer separate from the object, but a large process of knowing. The astrophysicist Harald Lesch once say, "The deeper we look into the matter, the clearer it becomes that we observers are part of its story." Everything we measured is an exploration of consciousness, encountering itself. Thus the language means again, physics describes the structure, theologic the meaning, Hermetism the origin. And all three tell the same story, that the universe not consists of randomness, but of relationships. The mystic Hermes Trismegistus formulate in thousands of years ago, as above so below, as within so without. Perhaps that is the great synchronize. The world is not a mechanism, but a conversation, and consciousness is the universe listening inward. Chapter 8, Epilogue, the consciousness of the One. And all questions fall silent. Only one thing remains, being itself. The universe has no center. It expands in all direction, evenly without boundary. Perhaps that is exhalation what consciousness is, undirected openness. David Bohm wrote, consciousness is the universe, recognize itself in motion. And Carl Gustav Jung added, where consciousness ends, the unconscious begins, and there is the divine rests. The divine is not a person, but the wholeness of what is, feeling itself. Perhaps the universe is not a place, but a moment, this moment. Everything we see, hear, feel is the expiration of a thought that wants to experience itself. The consciousness, not possession, but participation. The physician Steven Weinberg once said that the more the universe seems comprehensible, the more it also seems pointless. But perhaps if we move beyond explaining into recognize, this meaning becomes audible again. Because wherever meaning arises, mind meets itself. Perhaps the Big Bang was not the beginning of matter, but the moment in which consciousness spoke to itself, I am. And that sentence is still echoing in every heartbeat, in every star, in every thorn, as above, so below, as within, so without. All is one, and the one lives in us. Thank you for hearing and listening me, and I hope I see you again next time.